Germany has risen from the ashes of World War II to become the dominant force in Europe. But as continental crises rapidly escalate, Germany needs a strong leader. Learn what your Bible says about the coming German strongman next on The Key of David with Gerald Flurry.
Greetings, everyone. A strong leader is prophesied to rise on the European scene very soon, perhaps even in months. And we certainly believe we know who this man is, and that you can understand yourself if you only have, let's say, a moderate understanding of German politics, and perhaps maybe a general understanding of European politics. But we believe there's an over a 90% chance that you can identify this man on the European scene, and more particularly on the German scene. And we believe, if you look at all the politicians in Europe and in Germany in particular, we believe there's only one man that could even fulfill that, what it says about this strong man that's going to rise on the scene. So I'd like to get you to think about that a little bit. Germany dominates Europe today. Everybody knows that. They are the powerhouse in Europe, and they're gaining more and more power. And this man that I'm talking about is rising on the world scene, and certainly has a lot of understanding of politics, and is a brilliant man in so many ways. But there is a hidden power in Europe, and that all revolves around Germany. And soon they're going to lead, this man's going to lead 10 kingdoms on this earth to do some very devastating things. But on the heels of that is coming the most powerful prophecy that you could possibly hear about all of that violence and war ending forever, because Jesus Christ is going to, let's say, interact with that man and that power, and is going to destroy them forever. Now that is what's coming. I read just an article this past week where it said that Israel has 6 German-built submarines, some of which are believed to carry Popeye turbo cruise missiles that can deliver conventional and nuclear warheads. Now think about that. Here, do you think maybe Germany, who they don't even talk about their military that much, but they're one of the leading exporters of armaments in this world. And here they are building submarines and selling them, and they have nuclear warheads, or they can carry nuclear warheads. That's for the most part is hidden in this world. Now, I've mentioned many times before that Winston Churchill and Franklin Roosevelt wrote this document after World War II, and here is what it said. It is our inflexible purpose to destroy German militarism and Nazism, and to ensure Germany will never again be able to disturb the peace of the world. That was at the end of World War II. Not only has German militarism not been destroyed, they're actually building strong militaries for other nations. What kind of a danger is there in that? Now, it has neglected its own military somewhat, but let me tell you, that could change overnight, and will, when this strong man gets control in Germany. It's going to be a totally different military offensive than what you see now, that's for sure. When he rules Germany, that's going to happen. So again, Germany is one of the top military exporters in the world. Here's what Margaret Thatcher said in 1995. She was Prime Minister of Britain at the time, and she says, "You have not anchored Germany to Europe as the plan was. You have anchored Europe to a newly dominant, unified Germany. In the end, my friends, you'll find it will not work. So Europe, she said, was anchored to Germany, this nation that they said they would never allow to develop militarism again. And now you see the British people pulling out of the European Union for that very reason. They see that Germany is dominating that European Union, and it's going in a direction that the British people don't want to go. So where is it all leading, and what is going to happen here? Really, you have to understand that Germany did start World War I and World War II, and they are prone to start wars and have been that way throughout their history. And we can prove that to you and do all the time to many people. Daniel 12, verses 4 and 9 talks about Daniel being a book only for this end time, and now after years it could not be understood, but it is understood today. It has been revealed, and it has a prophecy about this strong leader. After all, why would God inspire it if it weren't to be fulfilled somewhere in this end time, the time we're living in today? But this man is going to rule over 10 kingdoms in Europe. And Revelation 17 tells you a lot about that. But notice what it says in verse 23 of Daniel 8. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. It's in the latter time, the time we're living in right now. But you have to prove that to yourself. There was time when the transgressors are come to the full. We have technology where we can just proliferate all the filth that you can imagine around the world, and everybody can learn a lot about evil that they should never even be exposed to. But here is a man that's going to understand dark sentences. What does that mean, and what does it tell you about this man? Well, let's read a little bit about him so we can understand him better. You can find the dark sentences as number 2420 in Strong's, and if you want to take it even further, you can see what it says about both words in some cases, and in other translations they just make the two words into one. But in the Theological Word Book of the Old Testament, it's Numbers 6:16a. And let me read that to you and what that translation says here. It comes from the word haida, which means riddle, difficult, question, parable. Then they write, it is used 17 times. The King James Version translates it 9 times as riddle, 5 times as dark sentences, speeches or sayings, twice as hard questions, and once as a proverb. They go on to say at a higher social level, this word in 1 Kings 10 and verse 1, a very similar word, in 2 Chronicles 9 and verse 1, it says were difficult questions posed by the Queen of Sheba to test Solomon and his reputation for wisdom. Josephus, Antiquities 8.5.3 says, it describes Hiram of Tyre sending Solomon tricky problems and enigmatic sayings. He was sending these enigmas to Solomon, and they wanted his view on them. The Queen of Sheba and the King of Tyre, they wanted to learn from Solomon's wisdom. This is a revealing insight because this strong man operates on a high social level. That's what this prophecy says. Now, you don't see too many politicians that do that and are famous for what they do. This man is also a famous personality. You can tell that by the context here. And he also answers difficult questions. He's a brilliant man. He is sophisticated and has mental depth, and that has to mean he's quite famous. but you can study more about him from the literature we'll send to you. But how many such men as this do you find in Germany? Well, I think we can be 98% sure there's only one. Now, that's quite a statement, but you look around and you will see that this man is unusual in many ways and so beyond and above many politicians, most politicians. Notice what it says in Daniel 11. He comes into power by flatteries, not even by votes from the people. Now, that in itself takes a lot of mental depth and really a lot of wisdom to be able to do that. But notice what it says in Daniel 11 in verse 21. And in his state shall stand up a vile person to whom they shall not give the honor of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. So God sees him, well, not the same way the people see him, but he actually gains that power, hijacks that European superpower by flatteries. He apparently puts together some kind of a small coalition, and that's how he moves into power. I mean, he is unusually adept at flattery. You have to be very intelligent to be able to deceive people in high places with flattery. And he does it magnificently. Adolf Hitler was certainly a man of mental strength, but he was not this skilled at deceit at all. But this is a new kind of leader, and he deceives people by flatteries. In other words, he comes as an angel of light. Remember what it says about an evil spirit being in the Bible? This word, dark sentence, is defined as twisted, involved, subtlety, fraud, enigma. That's in the Gesenius Hebrew and Chaldee lexicon. It also says that an interpretation, it needs an interpretation, an enigma. See, it's obscure, and you can't understand it unless somebody explains it to you, and this man can do that. So he stands heads and shoulders above other politicians, and you need to understand what is going on in German politics and in European politics, at least on a moderate level, and you will see what I'm talking about. God says this is prophesied, and what is the use of having it in the Bible if we don't understand it at the time we should understand it? In the latter days, and we'll see here even at the last end, Daniel 8 and verse 19, where Daniel explains all this, and God said he told Daniel that he would make him know what's going to happen in the last end of the indignation, for at the time appointed the end shall be. The end, last end, the end of the end time. Just a little slice of the end time is left. This is a sign that we're right there at the last end. We need to understand Daniel, and it's only been understood in this last end of the end time for the most part. And here, verse 23 says, I'll read this again, and in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences. And then verse 24, and his power shall be mighty. And it's not by his own power. He has some evil spirit helping him. That's what it says here. Not by his own power. Well, it's not by God's power if you look at the context. And it goes on to say, and he shall destroy mightily, it should read, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. He even destroys God's own people. Now, this is a European power, and it's going to be called the Holy Roman Empire. Here's what the Jamieson Fausset Brown says about this. It was all deceit, it says, for when they had given him credence, he fell suddenly upon the city and smote it very sore and destroyed much people of Israel. That's the way he operates and the way he's going to operate in this end time. And this prophecy is only for the end time. And that's all. You can see in Revelation 13 and verse 2, the dragon gave him, the beast, his power and his seat and great authority. Hence, the 10 kingdoms shall give the beast their power. They're going to give that Gentile power to this strong leader, this king of fierce countenance. Revelation 17 and verse 13 says, these 10 kings have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto this strong leader. And he shall prosper, and it goes on to talk about he is so arrogant and so self-willed that he's going to stand up against the Prince of Princes. He's going to stand up against Jesus Christ himself, and Christ is going to destroy him and that empire forever. It'll never rise again. And it has risen now. This is the 7th time, and it over a period of more than 1,500 years. So it's not something that's new. But notice verse 25. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart. And by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the Prince of Princes, but he shall be broken without hand. He is going to be broken by the very hand of God. He comes as an angel of light, but he's going to be suddenly destroying people, and a lot of people, with a very malignant purpose. That is what is happening here in these verses. He comes in love and peace and all of that, but that's not the way he really appears when the action is involved. He's charismatic, though, beyond words. You really have to be having a lot of charisma to be able to deceive people like that, and a lot of depth in your mind, a lot of understanding. You have to know that this is like a policy of his. It's always a craft and a deceit, and always that way. He has this brilliant mind that surely he has to know about technology, cyber warfare, and finance. All of those necessary pieces of knowledge to make this work. He really is an outstanding human being. But you need to look at what he's going to do. Look at what he does and not what he says. What he says causes nations to be destroyed because they believe he really is coming in peace, as he said. And he's coming with love, as he said. But that's not what happens. I mean, to tell you, whether you like it or not, or whether I like it or not, this is going to include you. It's going to include me. It's going to include all of us in this Western world. And we'd better understand what we need to do about it. We'll send you a package about the prophecy of this prophesied strong man of Europe at the end of the program, and you can understand this a lot better. But the best news is that at the very end of this, Jesus Christ himself brings it to a conclusion and destroys that evil empire and other empires that are evil, that are fighting against him on this earth. They don't submit to God when he comes in the heavens. They're going to fight against him with all of their sophisticated technology and all of their modern armaments. They think they can even conquer God, who's coming from the northern heavens. That an amazing part of the universe. Now, you can find that Angela Merkel is having health problems, and she's a weak leader at this time anyhow, and she's not going to be there for very long. And letting the Germans have a weaker military would not be appreciated by this man. So if you want to know just a little bit about German politics, why don't you look into the politics and see who is the major critic now of Angela Merkel and her failure to build the strong military, which this man will do when he gets in power, if he does, and we really verily do believe he will. But when he gets in power, this strong man gets in power, they're going to have a superpower almost overnight. After all, France has already offered in the past that they would share their nuclear bombs with them. They don't have nuclear bombs yet, that we know of, but they certainly have some atomic bombs that we have given them that they still have. So they are a nuclear power even now, though nobody discusses that. They have bombs that America has given them in the past, and they still have them. And that is true of several European nations. But look, you have to keep your mind on the fact that these people are the greatest exporters of military armaments in Europe and in most of the world. Here is a quote from our article, September 11, 2019, in thetrumpet.com. Current conditions in Europe, including the refugee crisis and the turmoil in German politics, provides probably one of the greatest opportunities ever for a new leader to come into power by flatteries. Chancellor Merkel is on her way out and is now a lame duck. Expect political and social crises in Germany and Europe and public resentment and anger to grow even deeper. We have an article, Germany, a new king is imminent. And we'll give you that one at the end of this program, and all of our literature is free. But that weaker German military is about to be corrected very, very soon. You can see in Habakkuk 1 in verse 6, it says, "For lo, I raise up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation." God is raising them up. Well, why would God do that? Well, it's all a part of what it says in verse 5. "Behold you among the heathen in regard, and wonder marvelously, for I will work a work in your days, which you will not believe, though it be told you." This is all in the midst of miracles by God Himself. Here, a double wonder, a double miracle, right before this. The Chaldeans are raised up and have that 10-nation conglomerate there in Europe. And then it says in verse 11 of this chapter, "Then shall his mind change, and he shall pass over and offend, imputing this power unto his God." He's very religious. Well, these verses tell you a lot about this man. Very religious. And has everything to do with your future and the future of millions and even billions before it's all over. But his mind changes, and it says in verse 12, the last sentence, "Almighty God, you have established them for correction." Well, God is correcting somebody. Who is that? And why should God be correcting these people in a strong way? It is, after all, a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God, Hebrews tells us. Notice verse 3 of chapter 2. It says, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak." At the end it's going to speak. This vision is going to speak. God's going to make it available to millions of people, because He always warns. A loving God always warns and tries to get us to see and understand this so that we don't have to experience all this terrible suffering just before the second coming of Jesus Christ. There is great hope, even if people don't repent at this time. There is still great hope. And it talks about verse 8 of chapter 2 that He's spoiled many nations. And then verse 10 talks about cutting off many people and have sinned against your soul. he has a history, and this nation of Germany has a history of cutting off many nations. But then verse 11 has a great hope, for the stone shall cry out of the wall, and the beam out of the timber shall answer it. And a big part of that double wonder is a new throne of David, and the very throne that Jesus Christ is going to come back and sit on and rule this world and bring it peace and happiness and joy forever. Man is not going to be ruling man anymore. He's not capable of doing that. He is inept in trying to do that. He should have learned that 6,000 years ago, but he didn't. So God is teaching them a lesson the hard way, but soon Jesus Christ is going to be here, and He's going to bring peace and joy and happiness to all of us. Until next week, this is Gerald Flurry. Goodbye, friends.
Request our reprint article, Strong Man Rising in Europe, to understand the specific Bible forecasts about this dominant leader. Also request a subscription to the Trumpet News Magazine. All our literature is available free of charge at no cost or obligation to you. Order now. The preceding program was a paid presentation of The Key of David, brought to you by the Philadelphia Church of God.